Layout arranges UI elements on the screen to create a visually appealing and functional interface. Therefore, understanding layouts is important because a well-structured layout enhances user experience, ensures content is easy to navigate, and makes the app responsive across various devices and screen sizes. Let's first have a quick review of what we have discussed about layout in Module 6 to refresh our knowledge. To start with building layouts with widgets in FlutterFlow, we should understand atomic design. We've seen how this structure approach plays out in FlutterFlow, from the simplest elements to creating full-fledged interface, which leads to creating pages. For example, in an e-commerce app, the user can land on the product list page after login. Then we have seen how creating these widgets in the atomic design and their parent-child relationship can generate widget tree. The widget tree in FlutterFlow visually helps you identify the widgets you like to work with and demonstrates how the layout is structured. This was a quick knowledge touch, but we will go deeper in the upcoming videos on how you can build different layouts in Flutter. Let's see what you will learn in this module. First, we're going to talk about pages. We're going to deep dive into the different part of pages and how you can manage pages, create and modify them. Then we're going to go through the different types of widget in FlutterFlow and how you can even control the different properties of these widgets to build your layout. Then we're actually going to build a layout with what we have learned about pages and widgets. And then you will see how you can even create responsive layout that works across mobile, tablets, and a desktop version of your application. And finally, we will review what we have done in this module in the generated code. Let's get started on this exciting journey to mastering layouts in Node. Without further ado, let's get started. Let's go a bit deeper into pages first. In FlutterFlow, you build a page layout using widgets. Each page you create is fundamentally structured using a scaffold widget, which is a widget from Flutter that offers a consistent framework for each page and allows you to define and organize its structure. Typically, you find the scaffold with the name of the page, for example, profile settings page in this example, at the top of the widget tree. Scaffold allows you to include easily app bar. An app bar, a widget that displays a toolbar at the top of the screen, which is typically used for branding, navigation, and actions related to the current screen. A floating action button, or FAB, which is a button commonly used for primary screen actions, such as adding a new contact, or composing a message, or inviting a friend. A body is the main content area where you place your widgets for the body of the page. In FlutterFlow, you won't find a section explicitly labeled as body. For example, in the profile settings page, the column serves as the root of the widget tree for the body, with the rest of the children widgets assembled underneath. We will work with the column widget in this module. Stay tuned. There is also the drawer, which is a slide-out menu that can emerge from either side of the screen. It is typically used for app navigation or placing additional options. It allows users to switch between different sections of an app without cluttering the main interface. Essentially, you can use a drawer and end drawer widget from FlutterFlow's pre-built widgets to create a drawer for your page. There is one more thing you usually see in many apps and pages: navbar. The navbar, or navigation bar, allows you quickly navigate between pages of your app. It is displayed at the bottom of the screen for convenient access. The items inside the navbar are represented by icons, optional text, or both. You can display up to 3 or 5 primary or top-level pages. pages accessible from anywhere in your app inside the navbar. By default, the navbar is disabled for any project created in FlutterFlow, but can be enabled if needed. We will do that in this video. All right, we have seen how a page is structured. Now let's see what is a page life cycle. There are essentially 4 key moments in the life cycle of a page. Let's get through each of them one by one. Initialization is the first phase where the page is set up. During this phase, the initial data is loaded, which might involve setting up the necessary state or defaults for the page. Then you go to the next phase, rendering. In this phase, the page is actually drawn or rendered on the screen. This includes setting up the layout, styles, and any interactive elements. The user can now see the page in its initial state. Then you go to the updating phase. After rendering, the page becomes interactive and can respond to user inputs, such as clicks, taps, typing, or other gestures. It may re-render parts of the page or the entire page to reflect changes due to interaction or new data. And the final phase is going to be disposal, when the page is no longer needed or the user navigates away, which this phase is going to be triggered. Here, resources related to the page are released from the memory and are no longer accessible. In FlutterFlow, most of the lifecycle stages are handled internally by FlutterFlow's architecture. However, some methods are exposed so that you, as a developer, can decide what additional configurations to load upon initialization and when to re-render the UI based on the interactions. All right, next, let's talk about page properties. In FlutterFlow, the properties panel located on the right side. Next, let's talk about page properties. We have seen the properties panel in FlutterFlow App Builder dashboard. This panel is divided into several sections, each dedicated to different settings and adjustments you can make to customize your page. The page parameters section allows you to define and manage parameters that your page can receive from other pages. Parameters are essentially data that can be accessed, but you may ask, what is parameter? Parameters are essentially data that can be passed between pages. For example, you might pass a user ID from a list page to a detailed page to display a specific information about that user. Next is routing. In FlutterFlow, route settings are essentials for defining how pages within your applications are accessed and interacted with. These settings allow you to customize the URL path for web and mobile deep linking, set meaningful page names as unique identifiers, integrate dynamic parameters into your routes, and set access restrictions based on user authentication. In Module 12, when we will learn about routing and navigation in FlutterFlow, we will learn about parameters and how you can use them with routes. Next are specific page settings. The Properties panel offers configuration settings for more advanced customization and functionalities within your FlutterFlow project. These settings allow appearance modification, greater interactivity, dynamic data handling, and more tailored user experience. And lastly, there are navbar settings, especially for the current page. I mentioned that you can enable the navbars from settings, which will be enabled for all pages, but you can also control and manage the navbar settings on each page separately. All right. You've learned now the fundamentals of pages in FlutterFlow and how you can work with pages. What is the lifecycle? And the properties that you may need to modify. Nothing will beat a demo. Let's start creating pages in a quick demo. All right, I'm back to my app builder. And on the right side, I have a profile setting page, which I want to create it as well. So this page, as we have seen, has app bar. So here is the app bar. Let me actually create 3 pages here. First thing first, I already created part 1 branch and I'm doing everything from now in part 1. So you're going to have the main as a starter, and then the part 1 is going to be everything we're creating right now. What I'm going to do right now, I'm going to go and create a folder. We've seen how we can create a folder. I'm just going to go and create a new folder called profile. Everything related to profile, we put it under this folder. I'm going to add a new blank page. We already have seen that you can create also from the predefined templates or with generative AI, but I'm going to create a blank one for now. And I will name it Profile Settings Page. Let's also create another page under another folder. Let's call it Orders. And I'm going to create Order List page as well. So now we have 3 pages. Let's work on the profile settings. So in Module 5, we've seen that you can define your theme settings, the colors, typographies, and the design system. I'm not going to go and design system. You can do that by all means. You have to do that. But for this demo, we're just going to set the colors directly. I already have got the colors from my designer, so I just put it into my lighting mode and the dark mode. So everything is ready. Then I'm going to go to the typographies and icons, and I will just select the Rubik as my primary font, as my designer said, and the secondary font to Roboto. All right, everything is pretty much ready. So now let's go and create our pages. So the first thing you will see is actually the app bar here. So I'm going to change the title to Profile for now. And as you can see, I can select the app bar. Let me open the widget tree. And here is what you can see, the app bar. So on the right side, you can change the background color to any other color. I'm just going to open this background color and select the secondary background color. All right. And for elevation, which is this shadow, I'm going to select 0 to just look like what I have. Another thing is the background of my page. And as you can see, when I select the page, the scaffold, the background color is appearing here, which is at the moment primary color. I'm just going to remove that. And I can select secondary background to match my app bar. So now I'm going to select the app bar again. And this time I can actually select the app bar setting. And you will see I have different styles. And the one that is looking like on the design is very similar to the one that I have here. So I'm just going to select and quickly make sure that the properties are matching the design. So my text page in this case, so as you can see, my text is also white. If I select the text now, I can go to the properties and then I have the text color. So I can change this white to become like potentially primary text or primary. I'm going to just select the primary text to look like better in my design. And then you see when I change the app bar setting style, I now also have an icon button where I need to go to the property settings and find the color in this case to make sure that it's matching my design. So this is the fill color, which I don't want it, or maybe we just need the icons color. And here is the icon color, which I can select the primary text. All right, that's good. There's one more icon in my design, like an edit icon, which I don't have it right now in app bar. And that's where is in the location of actions in app bar. How can you do that? For example, you can have an icon button. If you drag and drop, you'll see that in your app bar, you have a leading, title, and actions section. If you just drop it to the action sections, that's where you get these icon buttons. And now you can go and set the properties to make sure it's matching the design. So then another thing I want to enable is actually the nav bar. And as you can see, I have the setting here and I can say, show the nav bar on this page. If you want the nav bar to be enabled on all pages, you can go to the nav settings from here or click on the setting icon and go to the nav bar and app bar. Here is the setting of navigation bar and app bar, where you can set for the entire application. For example, if I enable navbar right now, it says navbar requires at least 2 pages. We're going to fix that quickly. But as you can see, I also have the app bar enabled on new pages. If your design doesn't require an app bar on different pages, you can disable this. So if your app bar is going to look like one of these, you can select each and then define so that you don't need to repeat this on each page that you are creating. But the good thing is that, like the one that we see right now, you may need to override the default setting in some pages, which we've done for profile setting at the moment. And one more thing, when we enable the navbar from setting, you see that there is an error popping up in the project issues, and it says navbar requires at least 2 pages. So I'm going to go and enable 2 pages navbar. So I'm going to start from this page, and still I get the error. I'm going to go back to home page and also enable it on home page. And voila, now I have 2 icons. So I'm going to do also on the order page. So now we have 3. So if I go back now to the setting, you will see now this time my setting for navbar is a bit different. So I can reorder these pages. For example, I can say the order list page goes to the middle and profile setting to the last one. And there's one more thing here is the style, the default style. So you can select the Flutter default style, or you can select the Google or the floating one. It's just up to you. I'm just going to go for the default for now, but you can do whatever you want in your project that suits your design. So let's go and actually set up the navbar icons. So now this time, if I go back to the page, as you can see, the navigation bar item properties is appearing here. And I can set the properties. For example, I'm going to change the icon in this case to a user icon. Or I go to the list page and change it to a list icon. You can do that also by clicking on this navbar settings in the canvas area. And you can also play around with different options. For example, if you want a different active icon, for example, if you hover over it, you want different user icon, you can do that too. All right, looks good. There's one more thing we want to do based on the design, and that's the fab icon, invite friend. And that's what you can do from Widget palette. Go to the Widget palette and search for floating action button, and you will see that you will receive the fab icon. You just need to drag and drop it to your page, and that will appear on the floating action button area. And now you can go and actually set the properties that you would like. For example, you can go to the fab properties and select the different icons. Or as the design requires, instead of an icon, we need a text. If I go to my fab and select, you'll see that in my widget tree, I have an icon for my fab. So I'm just gonna delete this and instead go to Widget palette, search for text, and then drag and drop it to the fab icon. There you go. Now, if you go to Widget tree again, you'll see that you have a floating action button plus a text, where you can define your text properties on the right side. For example, changing the font, the color, and the text for this button. Let's also fix the color. It seems like it's not primary. In fact, it's a different color. And there you go. Now it's very similar to the design. And one more thing, because we talked about drawer as well. I can go back to home page, and this time I can go to the widget palette and search for drawer. And you can see that I have drawer and end drawer. So I'm going to select the drawer in this case to my page. And you see that it's appearing on top of the page. And if I go to the widget tree, the drawer is now part of the scaffold, and you can hide or open it. That was it. Let's go ahead and test out what we have built. I'm just going to click on preview. All right, we're landing on the home page. I'm going to go to the profile setting page, and voila, I have my profile setting page. You can even test the dark mode and light mode. You see if it's dark mode and light mode, everything works as expected. All right, that's it. That was all about the scaffolding a page. App bar, nav bar, drawer, and fab. And in the next video, we're going to talk a lot about widgets and how we can build the body of our application. FlutterFlow has the following categories of widgets: layout, base, page, and form, which can be accessed from widget palette. Let's start with layout elements. These widgets help organize the structure and layout of your app. They determine how other widgets are arranged and displayed on the screen. Then the base elements. Base elements are the fundamental building blocks for creating the visual and interactive elements of your app. In FlutterFlow, the page elements category is essential for structuring pages and facilitating navigations throughout the app. And finally, form elements. Form elements are widgets specifically used for creating forms where users can enter data. The widget properties vary from widget to widget, but there are few properties that are usually common between widgets. Visibility is one of the common properties among widgets, starting with conditional. Conditional visibility allows you to control the display of UI elements or widgets based on a certain condition or criteria. First, you need to select the widget from widget tree or canvas area. Then, move to the properties panel and enable the condition. Then you can click on Onset and provide the condition that determines whether a UI element should be displayed or hidden. Also keep in mind, you can toggle Show in UI Builder to test the effect of showing hiding that widget in the UI Builder. This section provides guidance on adjusting these shared attributes across different screens and devices. We will learn about this in this module in the responsive video. Controlling the opacity of any widget opens up many creative opportunities. It accepts value between 0 and 1. For example, 0 means full transparency, 1 is opaque. Let's start with padding. Padding is an empty space around outer side of the widget. Next is to adjust alignment. This property helps you position the widget in two ways, horizontal and vertical alignment, where the widget will be placed horizontally and vertically inside its parent. The testing property enables you to specify the value key for the current widget, which serves as a reference point during automated test runs. All right, I'm back to my app builder dashboard. And when I go to the widget palette, you'll see that I have 4 categories. Let me just go through them one by one. Drag and drop the text to the body of your page, and you'll see that you have the text selected. Properties appearing on the right side. For example, you can change the text in this case. So I'm just going to say, hello, friends. Let's go ahead and define the paddings. And as you can see, you have two options, either independent or uniforms. When you select the uniforms, whatever number you give, it actually applies both vertically and horizontally. You go and check the independent, you can actually just do from one side that you are looking for, or maybe give different numbers based on the design that you have. Let's do the alignment here in this case. There are multiple options. So you have this visual where you can just select and it will apply the alignments automatically. Or you can manually do that, say here in this case, -1, and I can just say 1, and it will just select what it's supposed to do. There are also properties that are just specific for this widget. For example, text property, as you can see. And if I select an image property, you don't see this option. So the text property comes with multiple options, such as styling, font, and weight, size, color, spacing, line head, text alignment, maximum lines, and so on and so forth. So many options that you can play around based on your design. All right, now that we have done the text, let's do another one. Let's do actually icon. Now you have an icon here. And the property panel now shows, again, some of the common ones, such as visibility, the conditional, the padding, as you can see, and specifically the icon properties, like you can change the icon based on what you like, the size and the color. Let's go and do one more thing, circle image, probably. So this is also an interesting one. No. Again, you can just see that you have in the panel properties, common properties such as visibility, padding, testing, and then you get to the specific widget properties. You can also play around with the image type, whether this is going to be network, which means this is going to load from internet, or it's an asset. We're going to work with that. You can upload an image right away and just have it bundled with your application and show it here. Or it's already uploaded and you can just select it. All right, so I'm just gonna fall back to my network as it shows. Let's try another widget. So this time I'm gonna go to the page widget. We already worked with app bar, fab, and drawer and end drawer. So I'm not gonna repeat that again. Then we're gonna go through the form. There are multiple options here. Text field. So I'm just gonna drag and drop here where it's gonna give you a text field where people can type, or drop down where you can select multiple options. And as you can see, again, you're going to have on the properties panel some of the properties that are common, and then the ones that are specifically for this widget, including for drop-down define options. And I have option 1, 2, 3, whatever, so I can add more. But let's go back to the layout elements. So the layout element also comes with several widgets, including container, row, and column. Container perhaps is one of the most interesting ones. It shapes in different formats that you want. And you can have the container properties. I'm going to now open the page that we were supposed to create. So imagine now we had this circle image on the right side. We're going to create that here, but how can we do that? So we learned that we have a circle image. So I'm going to just search for circle image and I will drag and drop it here. So with the alignment, I just make it in the center. As you can see, if I look at the properties, there is no border, but I have a border here. How can I make that happen? And that's where the container comes in place. I'm going to search for container and then drag and drop it here. Now, I'm going to open the widget tree and you'll see that I have container and circle image. I'm just going to have the circle image move to the container because container can accept a child. So then now, after moving that, my container is going to have a child, which is going to be circle image. So what will happen now? I'm going to go to container right now, make it center. And what it happens is I can go and make my container a circle. Then I can give it a border. And I can even define the border widths. I'll change the diameter to a bit bigger. Fine, just to be more visible. And as you can see in the design, we have a little bit of space between the border and the image. And that looks like I need to go to my child. So I can just go to this and define a little bit padding. There you go. Now I'm going to go back to my container. I want to show you one more thing here. So for example, you can change the field color. Let's say you can change it to secondary. And this time, because the container background is actually different color, you see this is appearing. So that was just a quick demo of different widgets and how you can play around. But without any hesitation, let's go to the next video. So far, you learned how a page plays a role in creating a layout. We also touched the surface for using different widgets and widgets property. It's time to talk about the layout of the main section of the app, the body. When you start building a layout, one of the most common layout patterns is arranging widgets vertically or horizontally. You can use row widget to create horizontal arrangement of widgets. A row widget can have several children or widgets. Essentially, row widget has two axes, the main axis and the cross axis, which defines how the child elements should be laid out. In FlutterFlow, row has several properties to configure. Let's understand them. Main axis size is about how much space should be occupied in the main axis. You have two options of use minimum or maximum. The main axis alignment is about how the child elements should be laid out. Start means place child elements as close to the beginning as possible. Center, it means place child element as close to the middle as possible. End, it does the same to the end. Space evenly space child elements. Space around, which place the free space evenly between the child elements with some extra space at the beginning and end. And a space between, which place the free space evenly between the child elements. All right, that might be a little bit hard to understand. Let me simplify that for you. Take a look at this example. So this is what when we are talking about the main axis alignment. Imagine you have three elements in a row, and that's how the main axis alignment is going to work in a row when you select each of these options. Just take a look at the space between or center or start. Let's also talk about cross-axis. So cross-axis is about how the child elements should be aligned vertically with several options. Start, center, end, and stretch. Stretch makes children feel the cross-axis vertically. All right, so let me simplify that again for you. Here is how it looks like. This is how FlutterFlow allows you to set rows cross-axis properties. You can typically use column widget to create a vertical alignments. But that was about the row. How about column? How about if you want to set an arrangement vertically? You can typically use column widgets to create a vertical arrangement of widgets. A column can also have several children or widgets. Like a row, a column also has two axes, the main axis and the cross axis. In FlutterFlow, column also has several properties to configure. They are fairly similar to rows, so that's why let's just take a look at the visualization of these options. Again, the main axis runs vertically. Child widgets are laid out from top to bottom. This is how FlutterFlow allows you to set columns main axis properties. You also have similar options to row. but their arrangement gonna be vertically. Also, the cross axis runs horizontally. It controls how child widgets align from left to right within the column. You also have several options such as a start, center, and end, but in the context of a column. So when you understand one of them, it's going to be easy to understand the rest, of course. Let's talk about another option, a scrollable for widgets and rows. This option determines whether the content within these layouts can extend beyond the visible boundaries of the screens or containers, enabling horizontal or vertical scrolling. You have two options. Allow scroll, where when enabled, this allows the content to exceed the device or parent container's screen limit, making the overflow content accessible through a scrolling. If you select Do Not Allow Scrolling, it disables these options. This setting forces the content to fit within the available visible space, hiding overflow content or potentially causing layout issues. We're going to see that in a demo. Don't worry, stay tuned. And finally, let's talk about spacing for columns and rows. There are a few options. Item spacing sets the space between each child widget within the row or column. Apply to start and end applies the specified item spacing to the beginning and the end of the row and column. This effectively adds padding at the start and the end of the layout in addition to between the items. Start spacing and end spacing allow for additional specific spacing at the start and end of the row and column, respectively. This is useful for fine-tuning the layout to ensure content is visually balanced with the container or to provide clear margin. All right, but there's one more thing. When we talk about row and column, it's important to understand. As you can see, we can even use a row in the column as one of the widgets. We can call this way composing widgets, a fundamental aspect of creating layouts in FlutterFlow. That means you can combine different widgets to form a cohesive and functional user interface. You can have a column with the children of row, and a row can have a children of columns, and so on and so forth. Though when widgets are placed inside a row and column in a layout, they gain access to an additional property called expansion and flex. Okay, we need to learn this and see it visually, and we're going to see that also in the demo. This property controls how a widget behaves by occupying available space within its parent, row, or column. Well, let's talk about expansion properties. Default, which makes the widget not fill a space along the main axis. And when we're talking about main axis, it means horizontal for row, vertical for column, as we have seen. Therefore, the minimum space required by its content. Flexible allows widget to take up to the available space along the main axis. You can think of it giving it a max width equal to amount of available space. The widget can take up less space if it's smaller, but otherwise will be constrained to the available widths. And expanded makes the widget fill this space along the main axis. So here are two examples, as you can see. You can see two examples right now in the screen. Additionally, you can utilize flex factors to determine the flexibility of a widget within its parent container. A flex factor is an integer assigned to a child widget, indicating its proportional size compared to other children in the same parent. When you assign a flex factor, the widget can expand to fill any available space in the parent container. For instance, in a row or column, if one widget has a flex factor of 1 and another has a flex factor of 2, the second widget will take up twice as much space as the first one. All right, don't worry, I get you. That's why we're gonna have a demo at the end of this video. And we're going to go through all of this with a quick demo. But before that, let me just tell you one more concept which is very important. Sometimes you need to place a widget on top of another. To create such a layout, you can use the stack widget. Stack widgets will make a layer of widgets on top of each other. For example, stack can be helpful when we want to add a favorite button icon at the top of a product page. The concept of main and cross axes is less applicable to stack because widgets are aligned relative to the entire stack area. In FlutterFlow, you can control the stack children's alignment using the stack property default child alignment, which positions the children using X and Y coordinates. Now that we have seen the different arrangements of widgets like column, row, and stack, let's see how you can start building a layout. This step is crucial when you are just starting to build an app. Before adding widgets to the page, sketch a picture of how the main layout will divide it into smaller pieces. It's very important that you can identify these small pieces and group them together. Next, identify the widgets that can replace those sections, such as column, row, and stack. Once you have a clear idea of which widgets to use, you can add them. The next step is to examine these smaller sections carefully and, if necessary, divide them into further smaller sections and replace them with appropriate widgets. You can repeat this process until you achieve what you are looking for to design your application. All right, that's enough of the concept. Let's go to the app builder and start building our layout. All right, I'm back to my app builder dashboard. So if you look at this design right now, so I can identify that the main section in this design can be a column. So I already added a column and I can see it in my widget tree. So the next section is going to be this section where I have an image, name, and an email. This looks like a column. So I'm just going to go and find another column and drag and drop to the column that I have. We want to start with a circle image, and in fact, it's gonna be a container. Inside a container, we're gonna have a circle image. All right, and then I'm gonna have a text. And I need another text. So I'm just gonna drag and drop to the column. Let's go back to the widget tree. And this time, if you look at this right now, I have my column. Here is my page column. Here is my column at the top, but this text and text that I pasted is not actually under the column that I created on the top. So I'm just going to drag and drop this under this. All right, that's good. So let's now quickly create this UI. Another thing that I see is actually this one. Again, this looks like 1, 2, 3, 4 row because each of them, they have one icon, one text, and one icon here. So this is going to look like a row, and all of them are in a column. So then I need another column. If I go back to widget tree right now, then I have 2 columns. In the second column, I need row. If I go back to my widget tree, let me just collapse all of this. Then I have the main column of the page. Then I have the column on the top and the column at the bottom, which is going to have a row. And in this row, let's do that. I have an icon. All right. Then I have a text. Then I have another icon. In fact, the other one is actionable. Probably I'm going to click and go to another page, right? So that's going to be an icon button. Whenever you have an action, you want to do something, it's a button. So, but because it's an icon button. All right. All right. Pretty good. So now I have this row as well. Let's take a look. 3 children. Sounds good. But now let me show you one more thing here before I do the styling. If I go back to the main column, so if I go back to my main axis, I can play around right now with main axis. You see the difference. If I select the center, they're going to go to the center. If I select the end, they will all move to the end. The space evenly, space around, and space between. Now you can clearly see how you can adjust the alignment of main axis for column or your row. The cross axis, let's do that. So it's going to do the start, the center, the end, or a stretch. So at the moment, a stretch doesn't do anything because we don't have anything that it shows that. But I'm going to start with the center in this case. Let me actually show you the same thing now because we have a row. Let's go to the row. And try now, the start is already the start, center, end, space evenly, space around, and space between. So let's now do some adjustment here. So first thing first, the circle is gonna have a border. We're gonna have a container. It's gonna look like a circle. I'm gonna make the picture a bit bigger. I'm gonna give it a border, a size, and then I'll go and select the circle image and I'll give it a padding of 2. So I'm gonna go back to my container and make the width to 3. Okay, that looks much better right now. And now I'm gonna go to the text. So this is gonna look like a title. And I'm gonna select the primary font from my theme font. And let's make some padding in this case. So I don't want the padding from top, left and right. I just need top. So I'm just going to give it like 20 and a bottom of 20. Let's repeat the same for the email. So to make it just look like the design, I'll just rename the text to Jane Doe and the other one to the email. All right, that's good. I'm just going to make this a space as well. So I'm just going to select the column. I'm just going to add from top 10 and from bottom 20. Sounds good? So now let's go and select the row. So I don't have any background property for my row, and that's because I need to actually have a container and then a row. So in this case, the container will have a background and border radius. So what I'm gonna do, I'm gonna go to Widget Palette, search for container, drag and drop here. What we will need to do now, I'm just gonna select my row and actually move it to the container to become a child of a container. All right, that's better. So then the styling has shifted a bit. So that's why I need to fix it right now. What we're gonna do right now, we're gonna go to the column at the very top and make sure that the cross axis is gonna stretch this time. All right. Then I'm gonna select the second column, make it stretch as well. That's good. So now I have my container. I will go ahead and add a background for that. So I need a border radius. So I'm just gonna go to the border radius. Let's put it 8. I need to give a little bit of padding. So I'm just gonna select the uniform padding, give a little bit of padding to the row. And let me also change the height to 60, which looks like the one that we have right now. First thing first, let's change the icons. So the first icon for this one is gonna look like a map. And my button does not have any color. And the icon color is actually the secondary text color. So it's a different arrow, just I'm gonna select an arrow. Okay, looks better. And it's a bit smaller as far as I can see. Okay, so much better. So I'm going to select the row this time, and I will change the main axis alignment to space between. That looks better, but it's still not something that I'm looking for. First thing first is that there's a spacing from end and start, and can just give it a spacing from start and the end. There's another way that I can do as well, which is probably something that we are looking for. First thing first, the main axis alignment, I'll just put everything as a start. So I can select the text, and if I give it an expanded, the text widget is going to take up the entire space of the row which was available from the parent. So now when I did that, I can select the row again. And this time I can give it a little bit of a space because there's a space between text and icon and this icon, right? So I can just say 1 or even more 5 and apply to end and also start. Perfect. I'm just going to go and select the body small, medium. I'm going to just go and select the title small or maybe title medium. And just make sure that the color is what we're looking for. So in this case, this is going to be normal weight or maybe medium. There we go. So this row now is very much looking like the design that we have. All right, that's very good. So now I have a column with the container that we're looking for. So what we can do, I can just go on the container, right click, and make it a duplicate, or click on copy, go on the column and paste. There you go. I have another one. And I can repeat the same. Now I have 4 of these items, and I can see between my containers, the spacing is a little bit much. So now I can change this to the independent, and I'll just give it a 10 to my bottom padding only. So I'll show you why I'm doing that. So let's go and delete the container again. And now I can actually copy that again and paste. Fantastic. So I have now 4 of these options. That's very good. So another thing I wanted to show you is that I didn't need to actually really give padding to my container. Instead, I can go to my column and do that. So say from right is going to be 20. From left is going to be 20. That's looking much better in this case. So let's do one more padding here, and I'm going to go actually to this icon and give a little bit of padding from here, maybe 20. All right, that's it. But let me show you one more thing before we end, and I'm just going to select the container. And as you can see, it's selected already. Well, what I can do now is that I can actually document what I have done. I can go to my property panels and click on documentation and write the documentation for this particular widget, and it will actually appear in my generated code. It's strongly recommended that you document different part of your page or the widgets that you are creating so that everyone can see what you are doing. Beautiful. That was it. We successfully created our very first complete layout on the profile setting page. You have seen that some widgets are capable of handling multiple widgets. The most known one of these widgets are columns and rows that we just worked with. This widget have a functionality called Generate Dynamic Children that helps you generate multiple child widgets from a list of variables. This is particularly useful when retrieving data from like APIs, queries, and states. But don't worry about that. We will be covered one by one, each of them in upcoming modules. For now, we're going to go back to our demo for the columns and see how you can leverage Generate Dynamic Children option for columns. All right, back to my app builder. This was my page that we just designed in the previous demo. I'm going to go and duplicate the page that we created just to keep it as our reference. Let's put it duplicate. And I'm going to rename that to profile settings dynamic page. Okay, I'm just going to open the widget tree right now for this page, and I will have several columns. And let me show you one thing. If I select this column, you'll see that the name of the column is actually column. So let me actually rename this to profile setting column, just a little bit more clear. And let me also select this to profile details. And for this one, I'm just going to write profile setting items. So as you can see, you can change the name of the widget as you wish. So it makes it more clear and understandable. So for example, the container here can change to profile setting item. We can repeat that for the rest of that. I want to delete the repeated container. All right. If you go to the property panels, you will find the generate dynamic children icons. If you select on that, you'll see that you can set up a few things here. For example, you can give it a variable name. This is particularly important when you want to reference this variable for generating content. Let's say I want to name it profile setting items. The maximum numbers of item, let's put it 4, and the value. You can have different values. We have not learned this, but what I can tell you, you can select the random data and select the list of random strings. Just give it a minimum list of 1 and maximum of 4. The rest can stay as is. And now what happens is that if I hit the save button, it will generate its children dynamically from the specific variable. I'm just going to go and do that. And you see that the first item in the column is actually taken, and the rest of them are kind of transparent, which means they're actually not here. They're going to be automatically generated for us. You see that this is a static text right now. So if I click on this icon, which is setting from a variable, I will find my variable that I just defined. So I'm going to go and select indexing the list, and I'll just confirm. There you go. Now I'm going to run my application in test mode. Voila, you see that now there are 2 items because we just set the minimum of 1 and maximum of 4. So if I now go back to another page and come back to this page, let me just close the debug panel. If I go back to this page and come back again, you see now it's 0. If I go back and come back again, now it's 3. If I go back and come back again, because it's random data, because we selected random. All right, let's go back again. And this time I want to duplicate the dynamic page one more time. I'm going to go and change the page to profile setting dynamic list page. And this time I'm going to go to the widget tree, select the profile setting item column. First, I want to copy this. And I'm going to delete this. Just going to show you that column is not the only option that you can generate dynamic widget. So you have other options such as list view. So I'm going to select the list view and drag and drop it here. And if you open the widget tree this time, you will see a list view. And then I'm going to paste the container. So I'm going to go and give my list view a little bit of a space from 20 and 20 from left and right. All right, now I have a list view instead of a container. The benefit of list view is that it generates a list of dynamic items and you can scroll automatically. So, and it's good when you don't know the size of your list. So in case you know it's only 4 or 3, it's easy. You can do that with column. But if you don't know, the list view is going to be helpful. So if I select the list view, first thing I can change the name, profile, settings, list view. I'm going to go to the generate dynamic children, and we can repeat the same thing. You can say profile settings, items. Let's not have any maximum. If I leave it now empty, it will have no limit. And this time I'm just going to go and randomly select list of random strings. And I'll give at least minimum of 1 and no maximum. Good. Gonna save. And this is gonna generate a list automatically. Select my text and select my profile item, list in the index, and that's pretty much it. So I'm just gonna get the index of the list. Now I'm going to run this in the test mode. All right, now I'm going to my last page, which is going to be the generated one. And as you can see right now, it's actually scrollable. Whereas if I go to the previous column, it's not scrollable. I cannot scroll. Or the static one, it's not scrollable at all. But the list view automatically is scrollable, and it's automatically dynamically generate the content for me. I just want to mention that the list view also have specific properties such as the axis, where you can have a scroll in the vertical or horizontal and other properties. And that's it for this demo. Fantastic. We have created a list of items that are dynamically generated. And you will leverage this option in the upcoming modules where you have the dynamic data from APIs, backends, queries, and you can generate your content automatically. Creating responsive layouts is essential for ensuring that your app looks great on any device, whether it's mobile phone, tablet, or desktop. To build a responsive layout, you need to manage two key aspects: breakpoints and visibility based on those breakpoints. Breakpoints are specific points in your layout where the design changes based on the screen widths. In FlutterFlow, the breakpoints are set by default, but you can also set custom breakpoints to define how your layout adapts to different sizes. In FlutterFlow, you have two global properties that help you automatically figure out the screen size in both height and width. This is particularly helpful for setting conditional visibility based on custom values for widgets. However, as we have seen in the previous video, you also have responsive options under the visibility sections of property panels. For instance, you might choose to show a detailed sidebar on a desktop layout, but not on a mobile. One common technique is to design and create distinct widgets and components, and then load based on the screen size for responsive visibility properties. Another important concept is to make column and rows adaptive to screen widths and heights. While designing a row or column, it is important to avoid assigning fixed sizes to the children unless the design specifically requires it. You can also leverage the flex and expanded options for column and rows to fill up the free spaces. Another effective method of enhancing the responsiveness of row or column containing multiple items is to use the wrap widget. It prevents overflow and ensures a clean, responsive design, which is essentially useful for adaptive content like category cards from desktop to mobile views. The first thing I want to show you the responsiveness visibility. So if I select an element, let's say this row, you can select how to make this element visible, so on different device sizes. Let's say if I make it invisible on desktop or laptop or landscape tablet. Now, if I use the screen size here, you'll see that the first item is disappearing right now. So another thing I want to show you here is that if you go to the design system, the theme settings, you will have the breakpoints. So as you can see, this starts from mobile to tablet landscape and desktop and laptop. Let's do now a little bit of layout change for different sizes. So I'm going to just duplicate this page first, and then I will rename it. So I'm just going to keep this page now responsive. Right. What we're going to do right now, I'm going to do a row widget. And this row widget, I will make it invisible on phone and tablet portrait. And then I'll move another column and make it visible only on phone and tablet. So if I go back to my widget tree, now I can move my column to the column that I just created. Now I'm going to copy this column and then go to the desktop size. You see my row is empty. So I'm just going to go to the row and paste the column. I want to make another column next to this just for the menu. Right? Let me just create another column. Let me duplicate. Let's just move around the order. Sounds good. So the first column is going to be my menu. So I'm just going to move some buttons here. So the UI at this point is not really important for me. So I'm just going to duplicate the buttons. And then go to my column and give the proper spacing. So let's say I want to give a little bit of a space from all sizes. And I'll make sure that item spacing is also applied, also from start to end. All right, that's good. So then I will have my third column, which I wanted to take the entire space. So therefore, I will select the expansion to expand it. So now I'm going to just go and copy the container that I have to the column and perhaps make it duplicated. So obviously we need a little bit of adjusting on the padding. So just going to do a little bit of padding on each of these. All right, this is going to be my design for desktop. And when I go to mobile, it actually goes back to the original design. Let's also do one more thing here. So if I go back to my widget tree, you see that my menu is a little bit small. So I want to make sure that my menu and the next column are same size. So in this case, what I can do, I can go to the column that is in my row, the first element for the menu. And I go to the expansion and in this time select the flexible. And then I can give a flexible number. So let's put it 2. And then I go to another column and do the same and let's put it 2 as well. And if I go to the third one, then I can go, that one can take up twice the size of the other ones, or maybe a little bit more. And this time, the size of the third column is going to be 3 times of the size of the 2 other ones. This makes this way more flexible in terms of adjusting to the different screen sizes. So let's test it out. All right, looks good on desktop, tablet, and mobile. And there's one more thing I want to show you, and that's the conditional. So I'll drag a row to my column in this case, and while I can make it responsive with the responsive icons that I have, I can also use the conditional. What happens is that I can select the conditional and set based on a global property, which is screen size. And then I can say, whenever my screen size is greater than, let's say, whenever my screen size is more than 900, then show this row. So now I can actually create an app bar here. For example, I can have a text field for a search, a button, maybe 2 buttons, some padding, space between, apply to end and start. And in this case, I actually want my text take up the entire space. So therefore I select the text, go to expansion and make sure that is expanded. If I go to text, I'll go to the text field, though I'll make sure that is not expanded. Sounds good. This looks much better. This can be my app bar for desktop. And for mobile, we have the app bar already. You can also achieve this conditional with another widget, which I'm going to introduce, but the logic is going to be similar. And that's going to be conditional builder. You can select the conditional builder. Once you have the conditional builder, you go to the property panel. And in this case, you need to set your if conditions. Let's say I'm going to go to the if and say the property of a screen size is less than 600. That means mobile. Then if I go to the widget tree, you'll see now I have the if and else. So then I can select different widget for each of this. So in this case, what happens is if the screen size is less than 600, you'll see the first text. And if it's more than that, then you see the second. So the conditional builder is also helping to create your layout responsive. There's one more widget that is very helpful for creating responsive layout, and that is wrap widget. If you use the wrap widget, it automatically wraps the children that it has underneath. Let me just drag and drop some images, for example. Let me just quickly duplicate some of these images. Let me just have the handlebars. If I now resize my screen, you'll see that the wrap is automatically wrapping the images to the next row, which is fantastic. It's going to automatically resize it. Fantastic. That's it all about the responsiveness layout. Let's move on to the generated code right now and see what we have done so far. All right, here's my code. So if I open the Leap folder right now under Profile, you'll see that I have 4 different pages because we created 4 different pages. So I'm going to start with the first page that we created so far together, the Profile setting page. All right, let's go to the build method. In the build method, you'll see that after the gesture, the texture, you have the scaffold where this is going to have some backgrounds from the FlutterFlow theme, the floating action, which we added, the app bar, and the body. The app bar, where it's wrapped with a function that is named responsive visibility. This is because we made the app bar to be visible only on mobile and tablet portrait. And what this function does, it just takes into account from the media query what is the size of the screen And based on that, returns whether it's mobile, tablet, or desktop. So the breakpoints are also defined here, as you have seen in the theme settings under the design system. All of these are generated into FlutterFlow utils.dart file. Then we created our body. We had the column as the first child, and this column would have different alignments. So the alignments are also appearing under this column. I'm going to quickly go back to our design. So I'm going to show you this row where we had this text and we chose the expansion to be expanded. You remember this right now, right? So now let's go and check this code. Now I'm going to have my row here where, well, we have different alignments. As you can see, the first child is an icon, but the second child, which is a text, is wrapped with an expanded widget. All right, that's what I wanted you to take a look. And then we had another icon button. Then we created another page for dynamic list. So if I go to the widget tree this time, I actually even renamed these columns and widgets. So, and my column also had a variable name of profile setting items. Let's go ahead and find them. Now I'm going to open my dynamic page. Now I scroll down to the build method again. So we started from scaffold. See that the pages are starting from scaffold. And then we had the floating button, we had the app bar, and then the body. So let's talk about the body. This time I'm going to go a little bit down, and you see that this time it's going to be different. I have a builder widget here where, well, as you can see, the builder is going to use the builder method to generate a column with different children. And because I chose the profile setting items is also appearing here, which is going to be a random text generator. And based on this, a list of children is going to generate for the column. Let's check the other page that we generated for list view. I'm going to go to the body. And you see that this time, instead of a column, we're using a list view builder. So as you can see, the widget tree on these widgets are also very similar to the widget tree that you see on FlutterFlow. The last thing I want to show you is the comment that we created. If you remember, in my container, I've written a comment. So you can find this comment also in the source code. So if I go back and open my page, and if I navigate to the part of the page that is for that widget, you'll see that my comment is actually appearing here.